She didn't cry when she left. She didn't yell. She didn't explain. She just packed a bag, left a note on the counter, and closed the door behind her. No goodbye, just absence. I stood there for a long time, staring at that note like it might rewrite itself. It didn't. It said, "I need space." That was all. 3 words to end 8 years. I kept rereading it like more words would appear. The silence in the house felt louder than a scream. I walked into our bedroom, hers now hollow, closet half empty, shelves cleared of her perfumes. That's when I knew she wasn't coming back. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night, didn't eat either. My chest was a fist that wouldn't unclench. I kept checking my phone, waiting for her to text. She never did. Not that night. Not the next. 3 days later, I saw them together. Her and him, her boss, the same man I met at her company party, who smiled at me like he respected me, while probably sleeping with her the entire time. They sat across from each other in a restaurant. She was laughing, touching his hand, leaning close like I'd never existed. I stood outside, holding a bag of takeout I had bought for her. I never walked in. That night, I stopped being the man she left. I became the man who would rebuild, not for her, but because I needed to remember who I was before she broke me. I was more than a backup plan, more than the safe option, more than her stepping stone. We had history, but history doesn't keep you warm. History doesn't say thank you when you work 2 jobs so she can finish her degree. History doesn't sleep beside you and lie with a straight face. Love, it turns. Out has a shelf life. I never confronted her, never sent a message. What's the point of asking why when you already know? She wanted something louder, flashier, riskier. I was stability, and she resented that. People think betrayal is a moment. It's not. It's built in layers. A late reply, a cold shoulder, a shift in her voice when she said my name. I saw it coming, but I was too proud to admit it. I didn't talk about it, not to friends, not to family, because the moment you speak it out loud, you make it real. And I wasn't ready for it to be real yet. Not then, not so soon, but the world moves even when your heart is standing still. I still had bills to pay, a job to show up to, and a life that didn't care I was grieving. So I got up. Every day, even when it hurt to breathe. At work, I became invisible. Nobody asked what happened. Maybe they sensed it, or maybe nobody wanted to get involved. Either way, I preferred it that way. Silence was easier than sympathy, and I had nothing left to explain, only pain to carry. I started staying late, not to impress anyone, just to avoid going home. That house was full of memories, but it felt empty. Empty in a way that echoes, empty in a way that mocks you with every creaking floorboard. My boss noticed, offered me new tasks. I accepted everything, drowned myself in spreadsheets and numbers, became reliable, respected, even liked, but never really seen. It's strange how pain sharpens you, makes you focused, determined, relentless. When your heart shatters, sometimes your mind goes into survival mode. That's what happened to me. I began to rise. Certifications, extra hours, new skills. I became a version of myself even I hadn't met before. Stronger, smarter, colder. I deleted her number, not out of anger, but because I didn't want to give myself the option of weakness. No late-night texts, no what-if messages, no hoping for closure from someone who gave me none. I changed my routine. Gym before work, books instead of scrolling. I started eating real meals again. Not out of appetite, but out of discipline. Because healing is a decision, and I had made mine. One night I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Not in a bad way, but in a way that surprised me. He looked tired, yes, but he also looked tougher, less naive, more awake. A few months passed. I stopped checking if she watched my stories, stopped caring if she missed me, because the truth is, people don't come back because they regret it. They come back when they realize they can't replace you. And I was becoming irreplaceable. The promotion came suddenly. My manager quit out of nowhere. Corporate called me in. They had been watching. Apparently, my name kept coming up in all the right meetings. I accepted the position without hesitation. I became the head of operations. New office, more responsibilities, a different level of respect. I shook hands with executives I used to avoid in elevators. They now knew my name, and they listened when I spoke. That's when I heard her name again. It came from HR. She had applied for a position in one of our departments. A transfer request. Nothing special until I saw the applicant file. It was her resume, her signature. I sat there for a long minute, staring at the screen. It felt like the universe was handing me the final scene, the last page of a story I thought I'd already closed. But there it was, unfinished, unexpected. She didn't know I was here. Of course not. Last she saw me, I was still behind a desk, quiet, tired, just barely holding it together. She probably thought I'd stay stuck. She underestimated the silence. HR asked if I had any objections. Conflict of interest, perhaps. I smiled and said no. I wanted to see this through. Not out of revenge, but because I needed to see her look me in the eye as the man I had become. The interview was scheduled. It felt surreal. I didn't tell anyone, didn't prepare anything special. I just knew I needed to be present, composed. Not to prove anything, but because I already had. The day arrived. She walked in wearing a blazer like she was untouchable. Her posture was the same, but her eyes, they flickered when she saw me. Recognition, and then panic. She tried to hide. Tried to stay calm. Wow, I didn't know you were... I stopped her. Let's begin, I said. No emotion, no smile, just professionalism. I kept my tone neutral. I asked the standard questions. Tell me about your experience. Why do you want this role? What value would you bring to the team? She answered, but not confidently. Her voice trembled just enough. She knew exactly what this was. She stumbled when I asked about her last employer. She didn't mention him, not his name, not the circumstances of her exit, but I already knew. Everyone knew. He was fired after an internal investigation, not for cheating, for corruption. Her hands stayed folded. She wouldn't look at me for too long. She tried to act composed, but her knee bounced under the table. I noticed. She was nervous, not because I intimidated her, but because she knew what she lost. I kept the conversation short. 15 minutes tops. I wasn't there to make her squirm. I wasn't interested in payback. I just needed closure, to see her as a person again, not a wound. When the interview ended, she stood up, slowly. Hesitated. I didn't know you worked here, she said. I nodded once. She waited for me to say more. I didn't. There was nothing left to say. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. I'm sorry, she said softly. I looked up. Not angry, not cold, just still. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That apology wasn't for me. It was for herself. A desperate attempt to rewrite the ending of a story. She shattered. But I wasn't her editor anymore. She lost that privilege the day she chose someone else. I sat at my desk afterward, hands folded, breathing steady. For the first time in months, I felt nothing, not hate, not regret, just peace. She had seen what I became. She had seen what she threw away, not in words, but in posture, in silence. And sometimes, silence says everything louder than anger ever could. I didn't tell HR to reject her. I didn't interfere. What happened next was out of my hands, but I knew this. Whatever came of it, I already had my answer, and I already had my life back. I walked home that night, didn't drive, didn't take a call, just walked. Let the city noise wrap around me like a quiet celebration, not because I won, but because I didn't lose myself. There's a difference between revenge and redemption. Revenge is loud, messy, temporary. Redemption is quiet, it's steady, and it doesn't need an audience to feel complete. I made pasta when I got home. played some jazz, poured a glass of wine, not to numb the pain, but to enjoy the silence. For once, the quiet wasn't filled with memories of her. It was just quiet. I scrolled through my photos, not the ones with her. Those were gone. I had deleted them months ago. I looked at pictures of places I'd been, friends I hadn't seen in a while, sunsets I barely noticed at the time. They all meant more now. That weekend, I met up with some friends I hadn't seen in years. They said I looked different, not just physically, but something in my energy. They were right. I was lighter. I was free. I wasn't waiting for her anymore, not to call, not to explain, not to come back. I realized I had been holding space for someone who left without warning, as if I didn't deserve a conversation. And now, I didn't even want one, because the man I was building didn't have room for people who left him in ruins. He needed space, not for apologies, but for new beginnings. One night I saw her on social media. She looked tired, not unhappy, just different. The sparkle was gone. She had changed. Or maybe she was always like that. You can't love someone into being who you need them to be. I tried, for years, and in the end, I lost parts of myself just trying to hold her together. Not anymore. I wasn't bitter, not even angry, because what happened taught me how to love better, starting with myself, and that lesson was worth everything she walked away from. I used to think closure came when they apologized, when they explained everything, but that's not true. Closure isn't about them. It's about you, standing in your own peace, without needing their words. Her apology during the interview, it didn't heal anything. It didn't rewind the damage. It didn't rewrite the months of silence. All it did was confirm that she finally understood what she lost. But by then, I was already gone. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. She was just another person I used to love. No more power, no more weight, just a memory sitting in the back of the room. I didn't gloat, didn't smile at her pain, because growth doesn't need revenge, it just needs distance, and I had that, miles of it, built from months of silence, discipline, and honesty. You know what I felt after she walked out of that interview? Relief. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just quiet, steady relief, like finally setting down something I never meant to carry. She had been the loudest voice in my head for so long, but now she was just background noise, the kind you don't even notice, until you realize it's gone. And once it's gone, you wonder how you ever tolerated it. I spent the next weekend alone. No distractions, no company, just me, a book, a clean apartment, and a quiet mind. It was perfect. I didn't check social media, didn't scroll for updates, didn't wonder if she got the job. That part of the story was no longer mine. I had my ending, and I didn't need a sequel. People kept asking, "Have you moved on?" And I'd say, "No, I've moved forward." Because those aren't the same thing. Moving on implies forgetting. Moving forward means remembering and choosing better anyway. That's what I did. I chose better. Not better than her, better than who I was with her. The man who gave too much, who bent too far, who loved without boundaries, he deserved a better life. People love to say, time heals everything. But that's not true. Time does nothing if you don't move with it. Healing isn't passive, it's intentional. It's choosing yourself when you have every reason not to. I used to wait for someone to rescue me, to come along, see my pain, and fix it. But no one came. And that was the greatest gift. Because I learned how to rescue myself. Self-worth doesn't arrive in a moment. It builds slowly, like layering bricks, each one laid with effort and sometimes tears. But eventually you look around and realize you've built a home inside yourself. The nights got easier. The mornings too. I stopped hoping for texts that never came, stopped waiting for closure that never arrived. I started dancing in my kitchen again, offbeat, barefoot, and free. I got promoted again. Bigger office, more responsibilities, and With it came something unexpected, a sense of ease, not pride, not arrogance, just a deep inner peace. I stopped needing people to see me, stopped needing validation, because when you live in alignment, you stop performing. You just exist. Fully, comfortably, unapologetically, I deleted our shared photo folder. Not out of spite, but because I didn't want to keep curating a museum of something that had already burned down. Let ashes be ashes. Let what's gone stay. And gone. I needed space to create something new. One night I walked into my old neighborhood. The streets felt smaller, the air heavier. Funny how places shrink when you outgrow the version of yourself that lived there. I walked past our favorite diner and didn't feel a thing. That was freedom, not forgetting, but remembering without reopening the wound. That's how you know you're healing. When the memory sits beside you and doesn't speak, just listens. Stopped explaining my past to people. Not everyone deserves the full story. Some people only earn a summary. I went through something, I grew from it. That's enough. The details are mine, and they made me who I am. One of the hardest lessons I learned was that love doesn't always mean respect. She said she loved me, but love without care, without loyalty, without truth is just noise, and I've stopped listening to noise. It took me a long time to separate pain from attachment. I wasn't missing her. I was missing who I thought she was. The version I built in my head, the version I protected, the version she never truly became, that version never existed. I stopped blaming myself, stopped asking what I could have done differently, because no amount of effort can keep someone who is already halfway out the door. Love isn't about convincing someone to stay. It's about choosing each other, daily, freely, and fully. Looking back, I don't think she was evil. I think she was lost, searching for excitement, for power, for something to fill the void inside her. But instead of facing her emptiness, she ran, and in her running, she left destruction behind. Not just in my life, but in her own. She may not realize it yet, but what she broke in me forced me to build something she'll never be part of again. I don't hate her. That would give her too much space in my life. I simply don't carry her anymore, not in my thoughts, not in my heart, not in the way I move through the world. I travel lighter now, and lighter feels good. There's a power in peace that revenge will never understand. I don't want her to hurt. I don't want her to suffer. I want her to learn, to grow, to face the mirror without flinching. And me, I keep showing up for myself. Day after day, I keep doing the work, therapy, meditation. Morning walks, cooking meals I used to skip, smiling at strangers without reason. I realized I don't need a grand ending, no final speech, no dramatic confrontation. Life gave me all the closure I needed the moment I looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim, but a man who rose. And every day now I live like I've already survived the worst, because I have, not just losing her, but almost losing myself. And that version of me, he's not coming back. He's been replaced by someone better. There's a special kind of peace that comes when you no longer need closure. When you stop asking why and start living for the how. How do I heal? How do I rebuild? How do I thrive without needing to be understood? That's the path I chose. I stopped waiting for apologies, stopped hoping for a moment that would make it all make sense, because sometimes it never will. Sometimes people do selfish things without ever realizing the damage. And it's not your job to make them understand. I started creating joy again, not just finding it, but creating it, waking up early to watch the sun rise, calling my mom more often, taking myself to dinner. Not to prove I'm okay, but because I enjoy my own company now. There was a time I feared being alone, feared the silence, feared the space she left behind. Now I crave it. Now it feels like freedom, like air after drowning, like peace after war. I've learned to forgive without reconnection, to wish someone well without inviting them back into my life. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about removing their power, so they no longer get to live rent-free in your mind or your heart. I started mentoring a younger guy at work. He was going through something similar, heartbreak, betrayal, confusion. And as I spoke to him, I heard echoes of who I used to be, lost but not broken. I told him the truth. Healing isn't pretty. It's lonely. It's full of setbacks. But one day you wake up and realize you didn't think about her at all. And that day is golden. He asked how long it took. I didn't give him a number, because healing isn't a timeline. It's a direction. And every step forward is worth more than every backward glance. Keep going, I said, even when it's quiet, especially then. I think that's the hardest part. Accepting the silence, sitting with it, not rushing to fill it with noise, with people, with distractions, letting it teach you, letting it shape you, letting it become your strength, because once you make peace with silence, no one can shake you. Not her, not the past, not your own memories. You learn that you were always enough, always worthy, always whole, even when you felt shattered. I started journaling, not because I'm poetic, but because I needed to empty the noise in my head. At first it was messy, angry scribbles, fragments of questions with no answers. But over time, the anger faded. The clarity came. I wrote about mornings, the way coffee smelled, the weight of a quiet apartment, the first time I opened the curtains and didn't expect her to be there. I wrote about healing, how boring it is, how necessary. Healing isn't fireworks. It's small things, like making your bed, like going to sleep without your phone, like looking in the mirror and not feeling ashamed. It's slow, but it works. She reached out once. An email, just a few lines, no subject, no emotion, just, "I hope you're doing well." I stared at it for a long time. Then I archived it, because what do you say to someone who burned down your house and asks how the rebuild's going? You don't answer. You don't reopen that door. You remember who you were the day she left and who you are now. I started traveling. Not far, just weekends in new places, beaches, forests, mountains, places where no one knew me as the man who was left behind, only as a man who looked like he had just found himself again. One day I saw a father and son in a bookstore cafe. The kid was laughing. The dad looked tired but happy. I felt something twist inside me, not regret, just a reminder. We had talked about kids once. She wanted 3, I wanted 2. We joked about names, argued about schools. Back then it felt so real. Now it feels like someone else's dream. I wonder if she remembers. Not the drama, but the small things. The Sunday mornings, the cheap movie nights, the way I used to leave notes in her lunchbox. I doubt she kept any of them. But I remember, not out of pain, but because I finally understand that remembering doesn't mean holding on. It means honoring the journey, even the parts that broke you, especially those. Because they're the ones that teach you how to stand again. People often think the opposite of love is hate. It's not. It's indifference. Hate still needs energy. It still keeps the cord between you alive. But indifference? That's when you cut the cord and walk away without looking back. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't miss her either. She was a chapter, not the whole story. And when I realized that, I stopped rereading that chapter hoping for a different ending. I just turned the page. I started building new routines, volunteered on weekends, joined a small hiking group, started learning guitar, badly but sincerely. I filled the spaces she left with things that fed my soul, not drained it. I stopped measuring my progress by how much I had forgotten her. Instead, I measured it by how much I remembered myself. The guy before the heartbreak, before the compromise, before the quiet shrinking just to keep the peace. I laughed more, not because life got easier, but because I did. I stopped overthinking, stopped apologizing for needing space, stopped explaining to people who never earned the right to hear my story. One evening, I passed by her old apartment. She didn't live there anymore. I don't know where she moved. I didn't want to know. But for a second, I stood across the street and thought of the night we painted that place together. 2 kids pretending to be grown-ups. That memory didn't hurt. It felt like watching an old movie, familiar but distant. Something I once lived but would never go back to. That's when I knew the wound had closed, and all that remained was the scar. The scar didn't make me bitter, it made me real. It reminded me of what I survived, what I rebuilt, what I outgrew. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. We don't talk about choice enough. We talk about heartbreak, about pain, about betrayal, but we forget that rebuilding is also a choice. Choosing to stay down or get up. I chose the second, and now I don't look for her anymore. Not in crowds, not in passing cars, not in memories. I don't wonder what she's doing. I don't hope she regrets it, because whether she does or doesn't makes no difference to the man I've become. I bought new furniture, not because the old stuff reminded me of her, but because it reminded me of who I was when I let people treat me that way. I rearranged everything, new colors, new layout, new version of home that actually felt like mine. Even the bed felt different, not because she was gone, but because I finally started sleeping in peace. I no longer dreamed about her leaving, or about him, or about that damn note on the counter. I just slept and woke up lighter. I started writing again, not about her, not about the pain, just life. The way the sunlight hits the kitchen at 7 a.m., the way coffee tastes better when you drink it without sadness, the way silence feels like safety now. I met new people, not in a desperate fill-the-gap way, just naturally, at the gym, at the bookstore, even at the dog park, even though I don't have a dog. They were people who saw me, not my past. One woman smiled at me like I was someone worth knowing, not fixing, not rescuing. She didn't ask about my ex, didn't want the story, only wanted to know my favorite movie and why I ordered my coffee, black with a single sugar. It was strange being liked for who I was now, not who I used to be, not who I had tried to be for someone else, just me, scarred, survivor, whole. I didn't rush it, didn't label it. I let things unfold. Because when you've been through hell, you learn to appreciate peace. And peace isn't exciting, but it's everything. It's sacred. There was a time I thought love had to be intense, chaotic, all-consuming. Turns out that wasn't love. That was trauma, dressed up as passion. Love, real love, feels calm. It doesn't make you guess. It doesn't make you shrink. It doesn't punish you for being human. It doesn't disappear and leave a note behind. Love stays. And if it doesn't, it wasn't love. I had finally stopped searching for closure she could never give me. Because the truth is, some endings don't come with explanations. They come with evolution. You don't always get an apology, but you do get a choice. Let it define you or let it free you. Sometimes I wonder what I would say if I ever ran into her again. Not in a professional setting, but somewhere unexpected. A grocery store, an airport, some place where time stands still. For just a few seconds, I think I'd smile. Not to be smug, not to rub anything in, just because I'm at peace. And peace is something you can't fake. It shows in your posture, in your tone, in your eyes. She might ask how I've been, and I'd say, good. Not because I'm pretending, but because I really am. She might ask if I'm seeing someone, and I'd just say, I'm seeing myself clearly now, and that's enough. We wouldn't talk long, there'd be no need. She'd walk away still carrying questions. I'd walk away carrying nothing, not the weight of her memory, not the bitterness of the past. You don't realize how heavy things were until you set them down, until you stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen, until you stop measuring your worth through the eyes of someone who never really saw you. And I finally stopped doing that. The funny thing is, she thought I would break, maybe even hoped I would, like leaving would teach me a lesson. But here's the truth. Sometimes the person who walks away isn't the one who gets free. Sometimes they're the one who runs in circles. Growth is quiet, it doesn't announce itself. It's not a flashy post or a perfect selfie. It's how you breathe when no one's watching, how you speak to yourself after a long day, how you stand in your own company. I started loving my own presence, not out of ego, but because I worked damn hard to become someone worth spending time with. Someone who doesn't chase love, someone who doesn't fear being alone, someone who builds peace instead of performing strength. I stopped waiting for the universe to give me signs. I started giving myself permission to move forward, to forgive, to grow, to let go, to begin again. And the craziest part, once I let go of her, really let go, life opened up. New doors, new people, new joy, and none of it required her name. I kept all my old journals, every painful page, every desperate question, every midnight thought I couldn't say out loud. They sit on a shelf in my closet, not to revisit the pain, but to remind me of how far I've come. Sometimes I flip through them, not to dwell, but to honor the version of me who kept going, the man who sat in a dark apartment and still got up for work the next day, who smiled through meetings with a heart that was breaking. He didn't quit. He didn't numb. Yet he didn't burn everything down. He built, he rose. And that version of me, he deserves a damn standing ovation. Even if I'm the only one clapping. There's a quiet strength in survival. It's not loud. It doesn't post selfies. It doesn't need a quote. It just lives in the way you carry yourself, the way you breathe deeper, sleep better, trust slower, but wiser. Sometimes people ask if I'm open to love again, and the answer is yes. But it's a different kind of yes. Not the desperate yes. Not the I need someone to fix me yes, but a calm, cautious, if it feels right, and it's peaceful kind of yes. The kind that doesn't come from emptiness. I've redefined love in my life. It's not adrenaline, it's not butterflies from chaos. It's peace, it's being seen in silence. It's safety in the small things. It's knowing someone chooses you because they genuinely want to. I'm not chasing potential anymore. Not hoping someone will change. Not trying to earn love by shrinking myself. I am who I am, and the right person will find beauty in that, not burden. Her memory doesn't haunt me. It just exists, like a faded photograph in a drawer. You know it's there, but you don't need to pull it out. You don't need to frame it. It had its time, and its time is over. I've learned that grief can coexist with growth. That you can mourn what was while still moving forward. You don't have to forget to be free. You just have to stop reliving, stop reopening the wound, and start accepting the scar as part of your design. And once you do that, you stop fearing the next chapter. You stop thinking love is a risk. You realize it's an invitation to be known, to be held, to be chosen by someone who doesn't need to hurt you first. The version of me she left behind, he's long gone. I don't say that with anger. I say it with gratitude, because I've met someone better since then. Me, not the broken man, not the desperate one. This version of me doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't settle. He waits, he works, he builds, and he knows what he brings to the table is more than enough. I no longer confuse attention with love, no longer mistake chaos for passion. If your love requires me to bleed, keep it. I want the kind that feels like home, not a battlefield. I want peace, not adrenaline. My days feel lighter now. There's room to breathe, to laugh, to try new things without explaining myself. I no longer carry the weight of being someone else's everything while feeling like nothing. I've forgiven her, not because she earned it, but because I deserve it. Holding on to resentment would only keep me tied to a chapter I've already closed. She did what she did, and I did what I had to. I healed. I sometimes wonder if she tells the story differently. Maybe she paints herself as the one who grew. Maybe she leaves out the parts where she disappeared without warning, where she kissed him before she told. Me, it was over. But that's not my concern. We each carry our own version, our own truth, and I've stopped trying to control the narrative. Let her tell it how she wants. I know my truth, and it no longer needs validation from anyone. People still ask about her sometimes, old friends, colleagues who don't know the details. I just say, that part of my life is behind me, because it is, not buried, just finished. And I've moved on. Life has a way of circling back, of testing the boundaries you promised yourself you'd hold. She came back into my orbit, a new job, a different building. But the lesson remained the same. Some doors should stay closed. And mine? It's locked, not out of hatred, but out of wisdom. Because sometimes, the best way to love yourself is to never allow the past to speak louder than your present. I ran into her again. Not at work, not in some dramatic setup, just the grocery store. She was in the produce aisle, holding a bag of grapes. She looked up, I looked right back. For a split second there was tension, the kind that floats in the air when two people have history, but no longer have space for each other. She smiled nervously. I didn't. I just nodded. "Hi," she said. Her voice was softer, calmer, or maybe smaller. She didn't look like the woman who walked out the door months ago. She looked tired, worn. "Hey," I replied. No anger, no weight, just a man buying groceries on a Tuesday afternoon. She asked how I'd been. I said, "Good, really good." And I meant it. She hesitated, before asking, "Do you want to maybe grab coffee sometime?" I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but because that question used to be all I dreamed of. Now it just felt unnecessary, like trying to tape up a broken window. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. Not cold, not cruel, just honest. Because why go back to something that taught you how to survive without it? Why reopen a door you had the courage to close? She nodded, forced a smile, said, "I get it." But I don't think she did, because if she did, she wouldn't have asked. She would have known this version of me wasn't waiting anymore. We said goodbye, just like that. No emotional monologue, no final tears, just two people passing through each other's stories one last time. Quietly. I walked out with my bag of groceries, got in my car, and exhaled. Not out of stress, but out of clarity. That moment, more than anything else, proved how far I'd come. Because the man who loved her, he would have said yes, even when it hurt, even when he knew better. But the man I am now, he chooses peace. Every time, no exceptions. I used to think closure came with conversations. Now I know closure comes from clarity. And that grocery store moment, that was clarity, clearer than any apology, more honest than any second chance. It was enough. I didn't go home and spiral, didn't replay her words, didn't wonder what could have been. I cooked dinner, watched a documentary, slept 8 full hours, peacefully. That was my new normal. She became part of my past, not my pain, not my purpose. Just a name I used to whisper in memories that no longer echo. I didn't erase her, but I no longer carried her. That's the difference. Love taught me many things, but loss taught me more. It taught me patience. It taught me boundaries. It taught me that silence can be an act of love for yourself. And I've chosen silence ever since. I no longer measure my life by who walks into it, but by who stays. The people who stay without conditions, without control, without needing to break me to feel powerful. I've learned to walk away with grace, to exit quietly when something no longer serves me. No dramatics, no begging, no burning bridges, just a quiet step forward toward something better. Sometimes I wonder if she ever really knew me, if she ever saw past the man who made life easier for her, or if she only loved the comfort, not the soul. But that's no longer my question to carry. She had her chance. And now, I'm meeting people who see me without needing to fix me, who appreciate the man I am now, Not the one I used to be before I broke and rebuilt myself. They don't ask about her, they ask about me. And that's refreshing. I don't flinch at vulnerability anymore. I don't see love as risk. I see it as a mirror, one that should reflect truth, not illusion. And if someone can't handle that reflection, they don't get to stay. Simple as that, because I've paid my dues in heartbreak. I've sat in silence, faced my shadows, built a man out of ashes. And now that I've become him, the man I needed all along, I won't trade that for anyone who couldn't see his worth. There's someone new now. She came quietly. No drama, no fireworks, just soft conversation and steady energy. The kind that doesn't demand attention, but earns it. She doesn't ask about my past. She listens when I choose to share. She doesn't flinch at the scar. She traces it gently, like it's proof that I lived through something and didn't let it kill me. That matters. We don't talk about forever, we talk about today. How was your morning? Did you sleep well? Little things, the kind of questions that say I care, not I control. I find myself smiling more, not because I'm trying to impress her, but because I feel lighter around her, like I don't have to prove anything. I can just be. And she stays. That's new for me, and it's enough. We go on long walks, no destination, just two people moving in the same direction. We talk about books and food, and the songs that remind us we made it through. One night she looked at me and said, "You feel safe." I'd never heard that before, not like that, and it hit me. Maybe I'm no longer the man who needs to be rescued. Maybe I'm someone others can rest beside. I told her I'd been broken once. She smiled and said, "Me too." We didn't trade. Battle scars like trophies. We just held the silence. Not awkward, but honest. The kind of quiet that heals. I never imagined loving again without fear. But here I am, not afraid, not guarded, not suspicious, just aware and still open. Because love, when it's right, doesn't feel like a gamble. It feels like alignment, like two people who know what it's like to be hurt and still choose softness instead of armor. I don't know where it's going, and that's okay. I'm not chasing endings anymore. I'm learning to enjoy the middle, the part where you show up, where you stay consistent, where you build brick by steady brick. We talk about building, not fixing. She doesn't see me as a project, just a man who's done the work. She doesn't try to complete me. She meets me whole. And in return, I bring my piece to the table. I'm not rushing anything. Not love, not labels, not the story. Because this time it's not about finding someone to escape my pain. It's about sharing a life I love. We talk about boundaries, openly, no tension, no ego, just mutual respect. And I finally understand that real love isn't tested by chaos. It's proven through consistency. Some days I wake up and still remember the past, but the difference now, it doesn't pull me under. It just passes through. Like a breeze that once carried a storm, but now only brushes my skin. I acknowledge it, then I let it go. She once asked, "What did you learn from it all?" I paused, then answered, "I learned that love should never make you beg. It should never make you feel small. And if it costs your peace, it's too expensive," she nodded, didn't ask for more. That's the thing about people who've healed. They don't pry. They don't need the whole backstory to honor the strength it took to survive it. They just stay present. I don't check her phone, don't question her whereabouts. Not because I trust blindly, but because I trust myself. If something feels off, I'll know, and I'll walk away, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You see, I've built a home within myself. I no longer need someone to carry my weight. But if someone wants to walk beside me, to share the journey, to hold their own and still reach for my hand, then I welcome that. Gladly. The past didn't break me. It shaped me, carved out the parts of me that once accepted less than I deserved. And now I don't apologize for my standards. I protect them because they're proof that I've grown. And maybe that's what real strength is, not in avoiding heartbreak, but in choosing to love again after learning how deeply it can hurt. To open the door, not out of need, but out of choice. That's what I'm doing now. I used to want answers. Now I want peace. I used to want her to understand. Now I just want to keep growing, because healing isn't about being right. It's about being free. And I've never felt more free than I do today. This isn't a revenge story. It's a rebirth. Not about what she did, but about what I chose next. I chose to rebuild, to reflect, to grow through the wreckage instead of sitting in it. They say men aren't allowed to feel, to grieve, to cry. But I did all of that. And still I rose. Still I found my strength. Not in pretending, but in being honest with myself. You don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who celebrates you. And if that person doesn't show up, become them. Be your own peace. Be your own beginning. The past still knocks sometimes. Memories, old songs, familiar scents. But I don't answer the door. I smile, nod to the past, and keep walking forward. Because I know now, my future doesn't live back there. She's probably telling her story too. Maybe with different details. Maybe with softened truths. That's fine. We all edit the pain to make it easier to carry. But I don't carry it anymore. I released it. I released her. The pain, the confusion, the betrayal. I released the need to be chosen by someone who didn't see my value. And in doing so, I chose myself. Every time I say no to what drains me, I say yes to the life I've earned. Every time I honor my peace, I honor the man I fought to become. That's the real victory, not her regret, not my rise, but my choice to stay whole. This isn't just my story. It's the story of every man who gave everything and was told it wasn't enough. Of every man who was left behind, then blamed for the silence. Of every man who survived without burning the world down. To you, I say this: don't shrink. Don't settle. Don't let one person's betrayal define your capacity to love. You are not broken. You are rebuilding. And that, my friend, is power.